Imagine walking into a cafe, simply wanting a quiet moment and a small meal. But instead, you're greeted with impatience and disdain. This was the experience of an 89-year-old man named Mr. Thompson. He'd lived a long life, filled with hard work, challenges, and countless moments of triumph and hardship. All he wanted that day was a simple sandwich, something he could enjoy with a cup of tea to rest his weary legs. But what happened in that cafe not only changed his life, but sent a powerful message about kindness, respect, and the stories hidden behind every face. It was an ordinary afternoon. Mr. Thompson walked into a busy cafe downtown, the kind of place frequented by people on their lunch breaks, students huddled over laptops, and young professionals grabbing a coffee to go. Mr. Thompson, dressed in simple, slightly worn clothes, shuffled to the counter with a small smile. To him, this was an outing, a rare treat, and he looked forward to it. But as he stood at the counter, waiting patiently, he quickly noticed something strange. The cashier behind the counter seemed to glance at him with a look of impatience and even a touch of annoyance. People around him whispered, exchanging glances. Some smirked, and others even laughed, assuming he wouldn't notice. But Mr. Thompson noticed. He might have been older, with a slower step, but he could still sense the judgment in the air. Still, he tried to remain positive, his mind focused on ordering a sandwich. "Excuse me," he said politely, his voice gentle but clear. The cashier, a young woman who appeared stressed and hurried, barely acknowledged him. Without so much as a greeting, she snapped, "What do you want?" Her tone was cold, her eyes already looking over his shoulder at the next customer, as though he were an inconvenience. Mr. Thompson hesitated. This wasn't the warm welcome he expected. "I'd just like a simple sandwich," he replied, his voice steady. The cashier rolled her eyes and sighed. She made no effort to hide her frustration, muttering under her breath about how long he was taking to decide, and loudly sighing as though serving him was a chore. People in line grew restless, some even tapping their feet impatiently, adding to the uncomfortable atmosphere. At this point, most people would have turned and left, defeated by the obvious lack of respect. But Mr. Thompson stood his ground. He didn't demand special treatment. He only wanted what everyone else was there for: a meal and a moment of kindness. He quietly paid, leaving a small tip out of habit, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by those around him. He may have been dismissed by the staff, but his humble act of generosity had a few onlookers feeling a pang of guilt. As he waited for his order, one customer in particular was watching closely. A man named Daniel, who happened to be sitting near the counter, had noticed everything. From the initial indifference to the subtle mockery from the cashier, Daniel was appalled. But he was also struck by how gracefully Mr. Thompson handled it all, never once raising his voice or expressing frustration. When the sandwich finally arrived, it was thrown onto the counter with a careless shove, as if it was a burden for the staff to prepare. The cashier barely glanced in his direction, dismissing him with a casual "here." Mr. Thompson thanked her softly, took his meal, and made his way back to his table. But Daniel, still observing from a distance, felt compelled to act. He couldn't let this situation go unnoticed. Approaching the elderly man, he introduced himself with a friendly smile, asking if he could join him. Mr. Thompson, surprised but grateful, welcomed Daniel's company. The two started talking, and before long, they were immersed in conversation. Daniel learned about Mr. Thompson's life, his years of service in the community, his dedication to his family, and his love for simple pleasures like reading and taking long walks. As they talked, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Thompson deserved better than what he'd experienced that day. After hearing the man's story, he realized that Mr. Thompson had spent his life quietly contributing to society, never asking for much in return. Inspired, Daniel decided he needed to do something to make things right, if only in a small way. Excusing himself, Daniel went to the counter and requested to speak to the cafe manager. He politely explained what he had witnessed, describing the way Mr. Thompson had been treated. The manager was taken aback, embarrassed to hear about the incident, and immediately apologized. She assured Daniel she would address it with her staff. But for Daniel, an apology wasn't enough. He wanted to do something special for Mr. Thompson, something that would turn his day around. Returning to the table, Daniel asked Mr. Thompson if he would be willing to join him for lunch at a nearby restaurant, a place with a warm atmosphere and staff, known for treating everyone with kindness. Hesitant at first, Mr. Thompson agreed, and the two made their way to the restaurant together. When they arrived, the staff welcomed Mr. Thompson with smiles, showing him the respect he deserved. The restaurant's atmosphere was inviting, and the servers were attentive and friendly, making Mr. Thompson feel like an honored guest. He was treated to a delicious meal, and for the first time that day, he felt truly valued. Word of the incident soon spread throughout the neighborhood, reaching local news and social media, where people shared their outrage over the way Mr. Thompson had been treated. The cafe eventually issued a formal apology, and the cashier who had dismissed him learned a valuable lesson about respect and kindness, gaining a new appreciation for the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their age or appearance. Meanwhile, Daniel's small act of kindness inspired many people to look out for one another, especially those who might be overlooked or dismissed. The story became a powerful reminder of the importance of empathy and compassion, showing that even the smallest gestures can make a big difference in someone's life. For Mr. Thompson, that day became a cherished memory. He had gone into the cafe simply looking for a sandwich, but he left with something far more valuable, a reminder that there are still good people in the world who are willing to stand up for what's right. His connection with Daniel blossomed into a friendship, and they continued to meet regularly, sharing stories, laughter, and good meals. In the end, this story isn't just about a sandwich or a cafe incident. It's a story about the lasting impact of kindness. It's a reminder that we never know the battles others are facing or the struggles they carry silently. A simple act of respect can go a long way, and sometimes it can even change a life. And for Mr. Thompson, that simple lunch turned an ordinary day into an extraordinary one, renewing his faith in humanity and leaving a lasting legacy of kindness that touched the hearts of many.